Everyone, welcome back to Unraveling Politics, a political news show where I discuss the political news of the week and provide some of my analysis for you to understand. This is a very momentous week that it has been in Washington and around the world, really. The great North American trade war has begun. I will provide as much information as it comes. If necessary, I will certainly update you later in the week as the events and the economic news continues to unravel. And today we're going to cover how that affects you as an American, and if there's any international viewers, how that might affect you. As I said, it has been another crazy week, as the last one was. I don't know exactly where to begin, but for our international viewers, I know that you're out there and you're probably lost and confused, as many people in our own country are lost and confused. So I'm going to try to carefully walk us through the last few days and bring us all up to speed. Before we start, though, I want to begin with where we ended the last episode, which was on Monday. As that episode was airing, Trump started an international incident with Colombia over migrants. Specifically, the Colombian president, Gustavo Petro, refused to accept migrants on a military plane and instead wanted them on a commercial plane. He wanted them to be treated better. And Trump threatened 25% tariffs on Colombia, whose primary exports is coffee, oil, and gold. Basically, Pedro, whatever his name is, told Trump to piss off, and a few hours later he caved like a manila folder in the wind, or a homeless tent in a storm in Los Angeles. So Pedro agreed to work with Trump and accepted the migrants. So what does that whole saga mean? Well, it appears that the threat of tariffs seemed to have worked, at least against Colombia, and may only embolden him, and it obviously has, because of the tariffs against Canada and Mexico and China, and that would make me think that there could also be some on our European allies as well, which concerns me quite a lot. On Friday, Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, confirmed that tariffs would begin on February 1st, 2025. If you don't know what tariffs are, they're basically taxes on goods. They are similar to a sales tax in that they are passed on to us, consumers, most of the time. They are placed on companies importing goods into the United States. If they pay more, then they need to charge us consumers more. Now, why is Trump doing this? Well, on Truth Social, he wrote, quote, "Today I have implemented a 25% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada, 10% on Canadian energy, and a 10% additional tariff on China. This was done through the International Emergency Economic Powers Act because of the major threat of illegal aliens and deadly drugs killing our citizens, including fentanyl. We need to protect Americans, and it is my duty as president to ensure the safety of all Americans. I made a promise on my campaign to stop the flood of illegal immigrants and drugs from pouring into our country, and Americans voted overwhelmingly in favor of it." The end of the quote. Putting aside that we did not vote overwhelmingly in favor of it, in fact, Americans wanted lower prices, not higher prices. This is a concession in all but name that it would lead to higher prices. Because if tariffs didn't lead to inflation, why not tariff Canadian oil 25%? In fact, why not tariff it 50 or 100%? Better choke off Canadian oil so that the American oil can thrive, right? Well, that's because we import a lot of Canada from oil from Canada. And while I hate defending Joe Biden, it's not a Joe Biden issue. Refineries in the Midwest and the Rockies have been built to refine Canadian oil, and they've built that way for decades. It takes more than 4 years to build a refinery. We can't just swap out the oil. That's not how it works, because oil is not just oil. Anyway, I was skeptical that the tariffs would ever be placed for many, many reasons, since it would cause so much damage to the American economy, particularly in jobs and inflation. But Trump signed the executive orders at 5 p.m. on Saturday, which was yesterday as of this recording. 25% for Mexico, 25% for Canada, and 10% on China, as I laid out. Canadian oil will be tariffed 10%, which will cause as of right now, a $6 increase of a barrel of oil, which is about 14 cents a gallon for gas. These tariffs will take effect at 12:01 a.m. on Tuesday, the 4th of February. Canada has said, which is tomorrow, Canada has said they have a plan to hurt Republican states the most, and I will outline the plan in just a little bit. Trump has also said that the tariffs will increase if countries retaliate, so we'll have to wait and see. Trump has also said that tariffs will increase if the countries retaliate. I suspect the delay, because he originally said they were going to come on Saturday, is to allow time for Trudeau and the Mexican president to call to concede. But as I will say later, Trudeau has tried to call Trump for the last month. And Trudeau, anyway, is a lame duck prime minister, so he doesn't have much authority anyway. And according to NBC or ABC, I don't remember which one, I can find out, they said that these tariffs will cost Americans an extra $800 a year, about an extra $70 a month. I don't know how they reached that, but that seems a bit low to me. Once again, I'm not an economist, so I can't say much about that. If you're an international viewer, well, how does this affect you? Believe it or not, we have some listeners from other countries, and this could actually affect you as well. If you're a Mexican or a Canadian, I'll get to you later. But if you're everybody else, there's both a positive and a negative way this could impact you. Positively, Canada and Mexico could decide to turn elsewhere to do trade with other nations. My guess is that Canada would trade more with China, Japan, South Korea, and Europe, while Mexico would sell more to China, Latin America, the Caribbean, and maybe Europe as well. These ties could be established, and then once the tariffs are gone, if they ever are removed, which I think they will be, this could permanently if the tariffs are gone, resuming trade between the U.S. and Mexico and U.S. and Canada might not happen because the establishment is going to be, with other countries, is still going to stay. Even if Trump removes the tariffs and they don't go into effect, this could permanently damage our economy because people in Mexico and Canada, especially businesses, will be very reluctant to work with us. On the negative side, tariffs are likely to increase inflation here in America, which will lead to the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, and that will increase the value of the dollar. Increased rates will attract more people to buy more dollars, which will raise the value of the dollar. A higher value of the dollar will make it more expensive for foreigners to buy American products. Since Americans will be spending more money on tariffs, at least until they start switching their spending habits, they will decrease spending both here at home and around the world. This will probably weaken global growth and stifle the post-COVID recovery. By how much, I don't know. I'm not an economist, and nor do I claim to be, but that's something that we should consider. Basically, a stronger dollar exports inflation while a weaker dollar imports inflation. The stronger dollar will actually make it harder for American companies to do business because it's going to be more expensive to sell products, which is the whole point of tariffs to begin with. If that actually happens, we'd all be paying more money to cripple our economies, everybody, for no actual benefit. Utter incompetence, in my opinion. If you're a Mexican or a Canadian, I'm sorry, but there's really no good news here. Your government is likely to place tariffs on American goods, as Trudeau and Sheinbaum have said, which means that your inflation will go up, your interest rates will go up, which will make everything more expensive. And on top of that, since Americans will pay more for stuff that we don't buy as much, that means your businesses will get less revenue. Less revenue means more layoffs, which means higher unemployment and a recession. Once again, this would only happen if a trade war lasts for a long time, and there's no guarantee. Once again, for the Canadians and Mexicans, I'm sorry. However, Canadians, if you're out there, the offer is still on the table for you to join us, and I'd love for you to do that along with Greenland. Just saying. The New York Times has reported that Trudeau has tried, as I said earlier, to get on the phone with Trump since the inauguration, but has been unsuccessful. My guess is because he is in fact a lame duck prime minister. Meanwhile, China has vowed to challenge the tariffs at the World Trade Organization. I doubt they would win, and even if they did, it wouldn't stop Trump. And Trudeau has announced that 25% tariffs would be placed on $20 billion of U.S. goods, and another $85 billion will follow in a few weeks. And eventually it will total $155 billion. And I want to play a small clip of Justin Trudeau's speech to Americans. While I don't like Trudeau, I had to respect this appeal to Americans and Canadians and our shared history.
But it doesn't have to be this way. As President John F. Kennedy said many years ago, geography has made us neighbors, history has made us friends, economics has made us partners, and necessity has made us allies. That rang true for many decades prior to President Kennedy's time in office, and in the decades since. From the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of the Korean Peninsula, From the fields of Flanders to the streets of Kandahar, we have fought and died alongside you. During your darkest hours, during the Iranian hostage crisis, those 444 days we worked around the clock from our embassy to get your innocent compatriots home. During the summer of 2005, when Hurricane Katrina ravaged your great city of New Orleans, or mere weeks ago, we sent water bombers to tackle the wildfires in California. During the day the world stood still, September 11th, 2001, when we provided refuge to stranded passengers and planes, we were always there, standing with you, grieving with you, the American people. Together, we've built the most successful economic, military, and security partnership the world has ever seen. A relationship that has been the envy of the world. Yes, we've had our differences in the past, but we've always found a way to get past them. As I've said before, if President Trump wants to usher in a new golden age for the United States, the better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us.
As you can hear, he clearly does not want tariffs on Canada or Mexico and China, but it seems like that's the direction that we're going to be going in. And it almost feels like this is a declaration of war, like from Trump, like a military declaration of war, which it's not, but it almost feels like it is. As for Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, who is the new president of Mexico, has announced that they will implement a 5 to 20% tariff on pork, cheese, produce, steel, and aluminum, and for now the auto industry will be exempt. The Trump White House has accused the Mexican government of working with cartels, and there doesn't seem to be much evidence of this, but at the same time they aren't doing much to stop it either. The New York Times states the Mexican economy would almost certainly go into a recession because 80% of their exports come to the United States of America. So that's all I really have to say for tariffs. I mean, I might have a little bit more later, but I do want to move on to some of the other news of the week. Early last week, the Trump administration haphazardly announced the halting of all federal funding programs temporarily, supposedly, which is blatantly illegal. The Congressional Budget and Impound Control Act of 1974, which was passed in response to the Nixon administration's decision to impound federal government funding already approved by Congress, and remember, Congress holds the power of the purse in America, restricts the use of this impoundment. Basically, impoundment is the holding up of money from certain departments, usually to extract concessions. It's basically extortion. Trump is extorting the federal government agencies. Now, some departments are excluded, or were excluded, because as I will say, this was overturned for now. So what was included was the military, Social Security, immigration, and programs that give direct assistance to Americans. So that would include food stamps and Section 8 housing. But this order, as I said, was struck down by a court for the time being. It threatened the stability of state and local government budgets because state and local governments receive money from the federal government. For example, I'm working at a nonprofit this semester, and that money uses money from the federal government to buy diapers for single mothers and families, as well as fathers. And had this gone into effect, the ability to serve our families would have been greatly crippled because we wouldn't have had that money. Speaking of extortion, then Trump, quote-unquote, asked federal employees, over 2 million of them, to resign. Since there are about 2.3 million total federal employees, it's basically all of them. They expect a 5 to 10% of them to accept. And the other option will be paid leave until September, when Congress is supposed to start the new fiscal year. And remember, we haven't even started this fiscal year, so that's still up in the air. A note about government employees, though, I want to say that a lot of people don't know this, even some people on the left, that they constantly talk about trimming the fat off of government, and the truth is there really isn't that much fat to trim. I'd love to do a separate podcast about this in the future, perhaps if there's some dead time over the summer, but the craziness is not going to stop for the time being, so there's no time to do that. But I will just throw out now, the number of government employees compared to the total number of employees in this country is at historic lows. It is very, very, very low. In fact, it was higher in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s than it is now. The total number of employees, the raw number, is at the lowest point since the 1950s. And part of this is because so much of the work is automated. If you think about it, direct deposits means we don't have to mail out checks anymore. Of course, some human capital was always going to be required, but in order to trim the fat off of government, you need to look at the largest programs, which would be Medicare, Social Security, and defense. And that's where the cuts need to happen if you want to trim the budget. The problem is, for the most part, these are politically toxic to touch, and they're blocked by law. Eventually, as a discussion we will have to have later on, is that we need to have a long discussion in this country about Social Security, Medicare, and our defense programs. None of them are sustainable at their current costs, and our national debt is a good way to prove it. Anyway, will this actually work? The impoundment, which has been struck down, no, I don't think that's going to work. I think it's going to be upheld. And then the extortion of federal employees, I don't think that's going to work either unless Congress approves it. So I guess that could happen. But we'll have to see, but it remains unclear if the Trump administration has the unilateral authority to offer severance packages for these employees. I don't think they do. Will they try anyway? Of course they are. Moving on, the confirmation hearings of Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, and RFK Jr. this past week were quite interesting. I didn't watch them, but I will note that despite some attacks from Caroline Kennedy, I suspect that RFK Jr. is going to be confirmed, since the even more controversial Pete Hegseth has been confirmed. However, Kennedy's nomination could be defeated by Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who is a doctor. If he votes with the Democrats, then he will not make it out of committee. Do I think this is going to happen? I don't know, but I could see it either way. I still sort of lean toward his confirmation. Do I think he deserves confirmation? No, I don't. I think his past stances on vaccines is abhorrent, and he claims there's not enough evidence that vaccines don't cause autism, but there is decades of evidence that vaccines don't cause autism. There's decades of evidence. There's the only evidence that has ever been found was from a doctor who faked the data, and that doctor lost his license. So that should be enough for people. But I don't know the details on this. I had it written down, and I could certainly look for it. But there was 2 studies. One was in the early 2000s, and one was more recently. I think it was in 2019. In Denmark, over 600,000 kids were tested. So it's a very, very, very large sample size. Was there a control group, and there was a quote unquote experimental group, and it wasn't an experiment, it was just a study. Did vaccines cause autism? Was there a connection? No, there was no connection. There's no statistical connection. So it has been debunked. And will I agree with some of the stuff on like food dyes and cancers? Maybe, but I disagree with him on almost everything else. Scott Bennett, I think it might be Scott Bensett, I'm not sure. The Treasury Secretary was confirmed as well. As for Kash Patel, I think he will be confirmed. But Tulsi Gabbard's response over Edward Snowden concerned a lot of Republicans. Snowden leaked classified documents about a decade ago, revealing evidence of global surveillance programs by the NSA and it was the NSA and the CIA. Well, so her nomination is in big danger. These confirmation hearings have been so stupid, in my opinion, as they always are. It's not really necessary in this day and age. Republicans already know who they're voting for. Democrats know who they are voting against. And the whole point of these hearings is to gain information, of which we have gained not very much at all. However, this is par for the course in Washington. The problem for Gabbard and Kennedy is they don't really have a base of support. As former Democrats, they lost the support of Democrats, but haven't fully gained the support of Republicans either because of their previous stances. So their confirmations do remain in doubt. For now, though, I think Kennedy, as I said, I lean toward him being confirmed. I think Gabbard will not be. On the immigration front, which has seen rapid action, there was a report by NBC News on Wednesday that 300, and this was confirmed by the White House, that 300,000 beds were being prepared at Guantanamo Bay to contain the, quote, worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. At the end, that's the end of the quote, according to Trump. Now, the details are light, but I imagine that this is going to be a massive logistical challenge, as the whole mass deportation program is. The news has reported that almost 1,000 deportations are occurring each week. It's a good start, I guess, if toward their goal. But to deport 1 million a year, we need to do almost 3,000 a day, which is a huge logistical challenge across the legal chain: finding, arresting, trying, and deporting. I don't think we can get to 3,000 until at least 2027 or 2028, which by then the Trump administration is going to be coming to an end. As far as I can tell, except for where they can deport migrants, the Trump administration, or where they can find the migrants, the Trump administration doesn't seem to be deporting any more than the Biden administration. The difference is now that ICE is allowed to go into churches, hospitals, mosques, and schools. And yeah, so that's all I have to say there. I know that just last week I had a mostly positive view on Trump, but that is starting to shift. I'm a little bit concerned about the direction we are headed in too far too fast. If a pollster called me today and asked me, do I approve or disapprove of President Trump, I would say I don't know. I have a pretty neutral opinion at this point, but if things continue the way they are, it's going to be disapproval. The problem is Trump, just like Biden did and Obama did, is that they overplayed their mandate, claiming this powerful authority to radically change the country. But the election results and the polls since then show that's not what people want. We have to wait and see what's coming in the coming days and weeks, but the people didn't elect Trump to start international incidents or rename the Gulf of Mexico, which I still support doing that, or gutting the government from the inside out. They voted for Trump to lower food and energy prices, make it easier to buy a house, to get a job. While he's working on the border stuff, he's been silent on a lot of the other things, and I hope he starts working on the other end as well. What is shocking, though, is that Democrats, we haven't heard much from them, at least outside the confirmation hearings. The silence is definitely noticeable. It does not feel like 2017 from Democrats. Now, I don't really listen to cable TV, but I imagine the left-wing press has been really upset recently. But what I'm referring to is the politicians themselves. I haven't really heard much from Schumer's or Jeffries, who are really the only leaders the party has right now, because obviously Biden and Harris are gone. They do have a new DNC chair, but that's mostly a bureaucratic role. This makes me think they have one of two mindsets, the Democrats. Either one, wait for Trump to screw it up, or two, they are so internally divided that they don't know what to do. I anticipate it's more the first one. They're watching and waiting for Trump to screw up, while they're also trying to figure out their own internal issues as well. And at the rate he's going to screw something up. I guarantee it. The midterms are not that far away. And that's the thing about America, is that elections are never more than a little bit off the horizon. In the next week, we're going to be turning our eyes toward the issues tariff-wise. I still think they're going to be lifted. I just can't see this happening. It just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. But I'll be sure to update you as if anything big happens. Anyway, that's all I have for this episode. It has been a crazy time, and I hope you stick with me. Have a good one. Bye-bye.